On the east side of Lake Simcoe, there's a town that might seem better suited to Florida than to southern Ontario. The people who live here can get around by boat rather than by car, and many people consider it to be Ontario's hidden gem. This was the dream project of a European immigrant, but it never fully lived up to his vision. And in the context of modern science, it could be seen as an environmental tragedy. Welcome to Lagoon City. The story begins with Andrew Zsolt in the 1960s. He was a Hungarian immigrant with an engineering degree and an entrepreneur's mind. Zsolt grew up around Hungary's resort communities. He couldn't believe that Ontario didn't have any of these, and the sandy beaches of Lake Simcoe inspired him to make his own. This lake made a lot of sense from a development perspective. It was fairly close to the massive populations of Toronto. It had good beaches and warmer water than much of the Great Lakes. And Lake Simcoe is on the Trent-Severn waterway that runs from Lake Huron to Lake Ontario, which connects to the St. Lawrence River. Boaters living in Lagoon City could sail from their backyard dock to literally anywhere in the world. Until the 1960s, this area was a massive wetland. At the time, many people thought of those spaces as being useless.
I'm surrounded on all sides by swamp. Deep, dark, impenetrable, abysmal.
Now, of course, we know that wetlands are one of the most important parts of an ecosystem, but more on that later. Zsolt had big plans for this place. It was meant to have the finest resorts, water sports, nightlife, a golf course. He wanted to see Lagoon City become a world-class destination.
I'm Tom Zsolt, and I've had a long association with Lagoon City, primarily because my father developed it, starting in the early 60s. He wanted hotels, and behind me would have been the first resort condominium, timeshare condominium in Ontario. There was a huge marina built. Later on, there would have been a golf course. There was a small plaza put in for restaurants and stuff.
The next year, workers started clearing the land. By 1971, there were several single and multifamily properties on site, with all of the suburban infrastructure they needed. The 1970s were the start of the boom time for Lagoon City. Ontario greenlit more housing development, and in 1979, the Harbour Inn Resort opened for business. Many of the ideas from this community became part of Ontario's resort planning guidelines. By the 1980s, people were buying homes and condos here faster than they could be built. Lagoon City's success inspired other canal communities, but none seemed to have the prestige of the original. This footage is from Lighthouse Cove near Tilbury. By the early 1990s, Lagoon City was about a third of the way towards Zsolt's original vision, but it wouldn't go any further than that. The early 1990s brought a recession, and it hit Zsolt's company badly. In 1992, Inducon Development Corporation filed for bankruptcy. It meant the end of Lagoon City's boom time, but the people who had made their homes here worked to keep it as vibrant as they could. This community's official plan says it can hold up to 10,000 people, but despite years of steady growth, as of 2021, fewer than 2,500 people live in Lagoon City. This place still has its draws, to be sure. For folks who love getting out onto the water, this is a utopia. It's what led a lot of them to want to move here.
I'm Jim Hobson. I've been living in Lagoon City for going on 34 years. Well, I was a boater, a big power boater, and I was at a marina not in Lagoon City, up the lake a bit. Friends of ours come over here and discovered Lagoon City, bought a condo, moved their boat, and which is exactly what I did. And as time went on, and as the older I got, I decided that I was going to move up here full time, and I've been in this house a little over 20 years.
Lagoon City visitors can rent bicycles, paddle, and power boats. There's a shared sandy beach for the people who live and stay here. There's also things to do in the frozen winter, which just isn't an option for canal communities in places like Florida. But like just about everywhere, Lagoon City isn't perfect. Canal communities have their challenges, especially as they get older. The waterways need frequent work to keep them passable and to stop the shorelines from eroding. The canals do create some wildlife habitat, but they require a fair bit of effort to keep them from going stagnant, such as the oxygenator you see bubbling behind me. Like many shorefront communities, Lagoon City has experienced toxic blue-green algae blooms. Then there's the suburb effect. The nearest schools and grocery stores are the next town over, which is really close, But Lagoon City still isn't a complete community on its own. As Not Just Bikes explains so well, suburbs generally can't pay for themselves on their own tax bases. One of the biggest issues with Lagoon City, it was built on a wetland. That's one of the most important parts of an ecosystem. University of Waterloo professor Stephen Murphy says wetlands are key, and not just because they're home to many threatened species.
A lot of it is ecosystem services. What that means is it helps to sort of clean out the water, it helps to recharge water. It essentially allows us to have sort of a functioning ecosystem.
When a community like Lagoon City comes into a wetland, what sort of impacts does that have on the area?
It destroys it. I mean, I can't put it any sort of simpler than that, right? I mean, it was a terrible decision, but it wasn't a terrible decision because people were like, terrible or anything like that. It was a terrible decision because we didn't know any better.
This particular wetland was not in great shape before Lagoon City. A railway line and lakefront cottages had already brought some pretty serious disruptions. But developing over a wetland means there's no chance of restoring it to health. The remaining wetlands around Lagoon City are now considered so important that they have special protections. Ontario has listed them as significant on a provincial scale. Even if a developer wanted to come in and finish Zolt's original ideas, it would be tough to get support for that plan. Something I've heard from just about everybody I've spoken with is there is no way a place like this could be built today.
I guess it would be prohibitive now. If Ontario itself, as a province, can't build roadways through certain areas, imagine what a private developer would be allowed to do. It would have been much more difficult.
Whatever you feel about the environment, whether you're pro or don't care about the environment, it still exists, and we still have to be respectful. Lagoon City was an extreme undertaking by Indicon many years ago. I really don't think you're going to see several kilometers of man-made lagoons hauled out of a field. I really don't think you're going to see this, and if you do, I think it's going to be a massive undertaking.
Laws against building on wetlands aren't just for the sake of the environment. Keep in mind that wetlands are a sort of natural flood defense, so really, these regulations protect where people live. Murphy says that's going to be especially important here because canal communities will face stronger impacts from climate change.
And the biggest problem is going to be sort of storm events. And so what you may get is much larger storm surges and flood events. That to me would be the biggest risk, I would think. You might see stuff like you saw in BC, you had the atmospheric river, where all of a sudden your house, which was way set back even from the sort of area, and all of a sudden the water's lapping up next to your door. And that's really what the problem is. The extremes are just getting more extreme.
In many ways, Lagoon City is at a turning point. It's never stopped being a unique home or getaway for Ontario families, and property values have kept going up. But when you've come through a boom time, it can be hard to keep that feeling alive in later years. The people around here are certainly trying, though. Following its peak in the 1990s, a new generation has since moved into Lagoon City. They're putting their own touches on this place and trying to help it live up to its full potential. New management has refreshed the old Harbour Inn, and I've heard neighbors say they hope it'll be a hub for visitors and residents.
It's morphing into a different community, and different doesn't mean better or worse, different means different. And I'm pushing 70 years old, and I have full intentions of going out of here in a box, so I'm not leaving anytime soon.
The reason Lagoon City exists today is because it was Andrew's dream. He was here to make a resort town that was accessible to Toronto. He was a builder, he was an engineer. When I was driving down Laguna Parkway today, for the first time in about 10 years, I couldn't believe the number of people walking, the boats going by. You know, the concept is working. It's beautiful.
But there's another turning point. How will Lagoon City's planners make sure that it stays thriving amid a changing climate? Lake Simcoe is a heck of a lot more sheltered than, say, the ocean, but that doesn't mean it's immune to those effects either. It is possible to make any place more resilient to climate change, but that generally isn't an easy process, nor is it cheap. Of course, there's a cost of doing nothing either, a cost that might mean the end of places like this forever. Nostalgia is a hell of a drug. Childhood memories were a big reason why Andrew Zolt wanted to build this place, and nostalgia might be one reason why so many people still love it to this day. Yes, places like these have their flaws, and it is probably for the best that we are not building them anymore. But they do offer an interesting look at a different era in this country. That leaves an existential question. Will canal communities fade away, or will they adapt to the changing needs of the 21st century, keeping their place in Canada's living history?